Hey, welcome to VTS43. I'm Keith, your host. This is for September 2008. And yeah, how we doing? All right, here's what we're doing. We are continuing our series on me doing stuff. In case you didn't know, you signed up for this whole VTS thing. It's me doing stuff. Yeah. Um, if you thought it was somebody else doing stuff, you're in the wrong place. Last month we started with a scene. We did the layout on it. Kind of told you how I block, not how I block, but just how I proceed from the start to the end. And I'm going to do this several times on different kinds of scenes of all different kinds of, different varieties of animation pieces. And so this one we just had a real simple little kind of like a one beat, maybe a two beat scene. Very typical that you're going to find in a feature film. It's a very typical scene, a couple of seconds long, oftentimes one character with a combination of them speaking and doing an action. And last month we went through the setting that up and the layout and understanding, how to analyze it, analyze the audio, come up with a couple of key poses, thumbnailing, physical reference, and all kinds of things. So that's pretty cool stuff. I should pick up 42 if you want to know, if you want to be in the groove of where we're going with 43. And before we get too much farther into it, let's go ahead and take a look at just like a little, I guess you would call it a story reel for this little section of this one shot. Okay, so here's the scene, and have a look.
What do you want?
Pretty simple, okay? Nothing earth-shattering there, but again, pretty typical scene for what you'll find in a feature film. There's literally hundreds of these kinds of scenes. In any tip, pick a film, look at it from the greatest to the worst. You're going to have hundreds of scenes like this, okay? And so it's a good thing for us to kind of get into and start practicing. Last month, I went ahead and did all this, planning stuff, and I was able to set the two what I would call major key frames, storytelling poses of this scene. Now, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to work on building the primary breakdown. Now, what's a primary breakdown? Well, I tend to take a look at breakdowns as serving different purposes, okay? You can go back and get some of the older VTS, the back issues, that deal with breakdowns and in specifics, with the blocking and the post-blocking cleanup and stuff, but really look for stuff that has to do with cleanups. It's in the 18 to 21 range, 17 to 21. And then I did some stuff from 23 through 25 on post-blocking cleanup where I talk more about what breakdowns do. But the way I look at it is a primary breakdown helps us build a bridge between a pose and a pose, okay? You've got these two poses, but there's nasty water down here with sharks, and you can't jump across. You need a bridge. You need to build a bridge right here with a pillar so you can walk across the bridge safely from one pose to the next. So for me, the primary breakdown is it defines how you get from one pose to the next in the most significant fashion. Now there are other minor breakdowns. Pardon me, I've been having a cold. Have patience with me. But there are other breakdowns between the pose and the primary breakdown. I call those secondary. Sometimes they're useful for eases, or they're arc fixes, or they're little overlap things, but generally, if you're going to get from point A to point B, you're going to build this primary breakdown, which defines the nature of the move. So we're going to build that today. And yeah, I'm going to take about 35 minutes to just build one drawing. Yeah, I wish I could move faster, but the reason why I'm going to do that is I'm going to take a lot of time talking through what I'm trying to think of. I'm going to talk through about what I want it to look like, what purposes I want it to serve, some pitfalls. The other thing we're going to see is that sometimes you find things along the way. Now here's the thing to keep in mind. This is a little bit of wisdom. A lot of times people think, well, once you set your poses, then you've got your breakdowns and you've got your plan, and the plan has to be stuck to. And any deviation from the plan is a failure. It's not necessarily true. Let's use this as an example. You live in Syracuse, New York. You want to visit your Aunt Bertha, your Aunt Bertha in Pensacola, Florida. All right, so you sit there. What do? Do you just get in the car and start driving? You could, but you might not get there. All right. you know, what we do in animation sometimes, especially CG, is sometimes we'll just sit down and we'll just start moving stuff. It's like just hopping in the car and driving. Oh, where are we going? Aunt Bertha's. Where's that? Pensacola. Where's that? I don't know. We're driving. You don't want to do that, okay? You want to sit down and plan. So what do? You get a map. You look at the map. You say, oh, look, there's roads here. Now, you can decide how you want to get there. Do you want to get there the fastest way possible? Aunt Bertha's birthday is in 3 days. We got to get there because I got to give her a new set of false teeth for her birthday. Or you can say, you know, Aunt Bertha's birthday is another 2 weeks out. Let's take our time. Take the scenic route. Okay? How you get there defines which way you go. But ultimately, you are going from Syracuse to Pensacola, Florida. Okay? The start point and the end point aren't changing. How you get there changes. Now, here's the thing. If you want to get there quickly, you take the big expressways, right? You go 4-lane highways and all that stuff. You know, 75, 80 miles an hour and go. You want to take your time and see the pretty way, and you take the back roads and the little highways, and you just kind of find your way. Either way you go, you're not going to just hop in the car and drive. You're going to make a plan. All right? You'll sit down with your map and you'll say, okay, we're going to take route this, and then when we get to this city, we're going to turn and we're going to this one. You make a plan, the best plan you can with the information you have, okay? The information is this, this, and this. This is the roads we have. This is the car we have. We're going from here to here. Let's go. You've made a plan. So now you hop in the car. Lo and behold, about halfway down, there's massive road construction because the road is closed. The bridge washed out in a big giant thunderstorm. Oh gosh, we can't go to Pensacola anymore. Turn around and go home. No, you don't do that. And you certainly don't say, well, I guess Pensacola's not going to work. Let's go to St. Louis. No, you're not going to do that either. You're going to say, oh, well, that was an unforeseen problem. Let's go ahead and find a way around it and then head on our way. That's animation. You're going to come into things all along the way where you're going to be like, oh, I didn't see that. You don't have to abandon your scene. You don't have to abandon your goals, what you want to try and accomplish. You don't have to give up on the whole plan. You just have to say, I didn't see that coming. Okay, let's find a way around it. It's that simple. Okay? So when I do this, one thing you're going to find through this kind of series of way I'm doing things is I'm not going to do a lot of editing of my mistakes. Because I don't want to give the impression that it's possible to make a perfect plan when you sit down and plan out your scene and everything. You can see everything ahead of time and oh, lo and behold, it's just a matter of putting Legos together. It doesn't work that way, okay? But at the same time, you don't want to be loosey-goosey and just do whatever you feel like, because you can't ever get anything done. You end up driving in circles, all right? But I'm not going to edit out my mistakes because I learn from my mistakes. You'll learn from my mistakes. And the other cool thing is you'll see, hey, this guy's been doing this a long time and he has the same problems I have. You're right, I do. Okay? I come across things, I'm like, oh, I didn't see that one coming. Or, that idea I had isn't going to work. Or, geez, that's pretty ugly. Let's find something different to do here. It just happens. Okay? It just happens. And I don't want to give the impression that I know everything and I've got it all figured out. And once I do the blocking, I just sleep my way through it and just do it automatically. And it just comes up magic. Doesn't work that way, okay? Not for me. I don't know anybody else it works that way for. So there you go. Well, that's enough preamble and mumble bumble and stuff. Let's just hop in and get to work.
Hey, okay. After we do that little setup there, so we kind of reset where we're at, let's hop into this. Okay, we have our two poses here. We have that and that. Let me just kind of turn that off so we can see it. Here the door is transparent. But it's not going to be transparent. I'm just doing it so I can kind of see what's going on behind the door. What's going on behind door number 1? Okay. So from here, the start point to here, to explain why I even care what he's doing behind the door, you always feel the motion. Even if you don't see the specific place of where he's coming from, always define where a character's coming from, if at all possible. It's my belief that anything that's off screen is almost as important as what's on screen, especially when you're talking about feet. So many mistakes I see is for animators. They'll take an upper body shot and or specifically maybe a waist high shot, and they'll do something where they don't make the character move in a way that is we would say faithful to the base of how their feet are working. So I animate feet off scene. Now I don't worry about like foot roll and all that stuff, but I do worry about placement and balance and stuff like that. So that's why I took the time last month, sorry, to make this work. So now here I am. I want to make this breakdown, and those of you who watched VTS43 know that I did my thumbnailing, and I thought I want to do an under arc on the breakdowns. Because I like good good motion, good patterns. Okay, so his head is back here, and his line of action is very strong that way. And when he comes over here, his head is going to be right here, and his line of action is a strong reversal this way. What I want to have happen is I want to have it swoop under to get to this point. Now, is it going to be a really strong swoop? We'll find that out as we go. We don't want to force something, but the general motion is going to be under, not over. Okay, meaning he's going to come in like this. What do you want? Okay, instead of what do you want? Okay, both are valid, but I just like the under one more. I just like the feeling of it. And the other thing is, for the word want, I'm going to have him settle down a little bit. So he's going to come swooping through, and it's going to be like this, and then kind of come down a bit to kind of settle. So that's going to be part of it. Now, those who have followed me working know that the way I work is, at first, when I'm blocking things out, I work on drawings first, just like I was a traditional animator, and I work on pieces of paper, and I'm just trying to make drawings. So what I do is I treat each frame that the computer gives me as a fresh sheet of paper, just a place to make a new drawing. And the cool thing is I get to copy the drawing that was last shown. So if I were a traditional animator, I'd make these two drawings. Okay, I'd figure out what I wanted to do, and then I would take a new piece of paper, a fresh sheet, and create the third drawing, which would be this breakdown between the two of them. So what I'm going to do is I have a little Mel script that lets me move the keys over. I have it hotkeyed. So now I have this right here. Okay, I did that for the door, but I didn't do it for everything else. So let me move that over. Okay. So now I had these keys were set to be linear when I made them, and that's fine. Because I'm working frame by frame, it doesn't matter to me if they're stepped or linear. I made them linear because when I move this over, I get this for free. Now, is that useful to me? Not particularly, no. But I do know what kind of math the computer likes now. It's really weird. This is the part where CG animation changes quite a bit from traditional animation. Traditional animation, as long as the pencil lines work, generally it works. Okay, you can make the drawing be whatever you want to do, and as long as the shape on the screen works, it's fine. CG is similar, but it's more rigid. A lot of times it's difficult to control the silhouette of these shapes, and a lot of times the computer has a way of solving something mathematically on a rotation basis, especially on rotation bases, that if you don't play nice with the computer, it kind of rises up and bites you a little bit. So a lot of times it's important to kind of know what the computer likes to do. But I'm just going to kind of work from here. I'm going to take this and I'm going to open the door just a bit more, okay? Because I want this to be something at this point. Now, here's the thing. Before I get too much further into this, I want to talk about my thinking about breakdowns. We have a pose, okay? Pose 1. Well, we'll call it pose A and pose B, okay? And so you have da-da and da-da. And I can create what I call a primary breakdown somewhere in here, okay? So if this is at frame 1 and this is at frame 10, the natural place for the middle of this is going to be around frame 6, okay? More or less. Well, let's make this frame 11, all right? Frame 6. So you have 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, so here's your key, and let's say we make this breakdown right at frame 6. As in our mind, we think, okay, this is going to be a 50% timing breakdown. However, I may not want it to be at that exact moment. Okay, I may say, well, I want that breakdown to happen at 4, or maybe I want it to happen at 8, or maybe 9. Okay, right now the way I kind of handle it is I pick a midway point and I try to make it functional between A and B and try and create a breakdown that sort of works between the two of them. And what I'll end up doing is as I work I try to edit that so that there's a sense of being favored. Either we favor, it's going to be more like this one at frame 6 or it's going to be more like this one at frame 6. So this right here might be like this at frame 6 or it might be like this at frame 6. It's still at 6, it's just that it's the value, the way it looks is more like the one that follows or the one that precedes it. Right there is what you call just a linear breakdown. It just creates the simplest way to go. Now you can think about these things before you get too far into it, and this is why I wanted to stop and take a look at it. I want there to be a sense of the door kind of snapping open and him kind of flying up at the same time. So I kind of want I want to ease out like the door is just starting to open and then it flies open really fast, so it's a slow fast. And I want the same thing for him. I don't want the door and then him to be two separate actions. I don't want the door and then him. I want them to be together. It's just the way I envision things. Now of course the door has to open up a little bit more in order for him to slide through. So the door does have to lead, but I don't want this sense of the door and then him. Okay, the door leads a little bit and then he goes. All right, it's just for the physics of it all. I need to get that working. But again, I don't want a two-stage move. I'm not a big fan of two-stage moves where one thing happens and then another thing happens. It's functional at times, but I kind of like to blend them together. Keeps things feeling organic. So as he starts to open the door, it's going to go fairly slow, and then somewhere it's just going to snap open, and as it snaps open, he thrusts himself forward. Okay, so how that looks, if this is the door, and this is, let's say this is his head, because the head's the primary thing we're going to watch. The track of the motion for the door is going to look something like, well, here's A and here's B. Okay, just think in terms, if you're a graph editor kind of guy, think in terms like this. The door is going to be slow, okay, and then fast, and then it's going to ease. Okay, and his head is going to be very, very slow, and somewhere after the door goes, it's going to also be fast, but it's going to end up only slightly after the door ends, and then it's going to ease. So what we're looking at is the head kind of hits its mark a little bit after the door, and it begins its move a little bit after the door. So they're offset, but they're very similar. So the way I think about that is, okay, well, what kind of breakdown do I want here? If I pick a breakdown that's going to function somewhere in this area here, it's probably not a bad idea to pick one that's halfway between the move. Okay, somewhere in both. So I think in terms of, okay, the head is going to be about halfway from its start point to its end point. Okay, so somewhere in halfway, but the door has to be more than halfway because it's got to open up a little bit sooner. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay, so this is how I think about, well, what does my breakdown need to look like? I analyze the motion. I think, I know it's a dangerous thing, I know. So the door right there is all the way open, so I'm actually opening it even a bit more than it's supposed to be all the way. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and get it, there we go, it's not quite halfway, and you can see this a lot better from the top view. So our door is like this, and then at the end it's like this. So the halfway point would be somewhere right around here, and we are a little bit more than halfway. No, I could just do this. Alright, and kind of cheat it a little bit from above. Do we see it that way? Not necessarily, but it kind of gives you the idea. I'm kind of choosing that place where the door is mostly open all the way, but not quite. Okay, so so here I am back here. So that gives me the door to work with, and now I can work with him. Again, we're going to do this under sweep sort of thing. So one of the first things I'll do is the hips have quite a bit of motion in here, but the motion is kind of down. Okay, it goes from here to here. There's not a lot of forward movement on the motion on the hips. You know, they're kind of up here, and then they just kind of come down and forward just a tiny little bit. So it's mostly the hips are not moving through space. They're just it's like a pivot point for the body. Okay, so what I want to do here is I'm just going to set a key, and I kind of want it to feel more like it's almost done rotating. So what I'll do is I'll kind of favor the second one. Okay. Now there's a couple of tools that I like to use that make life simpler for me. One of them is one I wrote myself, but another one that's very commonly used, if you're a Maya guy, you can use, my friend Justin Barrett wrote his clever little tool called Tween Machine, which allows you to take a frame in a particular object, and it use, you know, here's pose A, here's, oh man, let's use something we can see, man. Pose A is the beginning, pose B is the end, and this right here tells you how far between, you know, 0 is A, 100 is B. Meaning at this key, if you hit 0 or minus 100, it's exactly like the previous key. There's no motion at all. And if you make it plus 100, it's exactly like the key that follows. There's no motion between here and here. If you set it right at 0, it's a perfectly linear key, meaning it's exactly halfway between the two. So what I want to do is I want to get the hips most of the way there on this breakdown, because I like offsetting things. I don't like having I really don't like having everything arrive at the same time. So you have this, 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 and this, and you know, they all kind of make the travel. They all go from point A to point B in pretty much the same time. Okay, but at any point in time, you know, so this is frame 1, this is frame 11, say somewhere around frame 6. And when I say 1 and 11, I'm not saying the motion I'm building for this scene is going to be 1 and 11. I just use it as an example. So let's say at frame 6, we're going to draw these different things moving. Well, I like to have them at different places along the curve, or I mean along the motion, so that well, maybe something like this. They're not always the same, you know, like that. If this were a hand, maybe the hand really drags. If this were the hips, I generally it's not a rule, but I like the idea of getting the hips most of the way there fairly quickly. If it's a slow, fast kind of move, where I just like getting the hips there most of the way first, because it's like if you're going to move something from one plate to another plate, you have to have a plate for it to move on. So if you got a stack of donuts and you want to move them, well, you got to have a place to put the donuts. So getting the hips over is kind of like getting a plate over there, and all the body parts are donuts. Maybe I'm hungry, but you can't just set donuts in the middle of the air. There's no place for them to go, so you need to kind of get a plate there. So I take a look at the core of the body, sort of like, you know, those hips, that center of gravity. It's kind of like the plate, so that all the other things can kind of stack up on top of it. So anyways, the reason why I'm making a mention of this is I like to offset these things in this drawing. Okay, it's all the same drawing, but the body parts are moving, or have moved different amounts relative to their distance from point A to point B compared to one another. Instead of just doing what the computer does, which is, you know, everything is right here. And you know, if you can get a breakdown and that's the best you can do, well, I think that's a better breakdown than no breakdown at all. But I think the more functional, the better ones that are kind of cool to watch are the ones where things are offset. And that's how you keep things loose too. You keep things loose in a sense you don't have to offset keys or any of that jazz. You don't have to fart around with curves. You can just build it into the body so that it's moving in that particular way. So I kind of want this to be most of the way there. Okay, so that the hips are most of the way there. And then what I can do is kind of do the same thing with the chest. Okay, now that's a perfectly linear move so far. Okay, because I'm not really doing anything special as far as position and screen. Okay, it's a linear move. You notice that the head is here, and then the head ends here, and then in between the head is quite literally right on that continuum. Okay, it's right along that line. You will notice though that it is favoring the second pose, which is kind of not what I wanted to do right at this moment. Okay, I wanted it to favor this one. So now I have to think in terms. Okay, here's where it starts to get fun and interesting. So now I just kind of abandon this thing right now, and I try to build something where we get more of that arc thing going. Okay, and this is sometimes where the plan starts deviating. This is where we kind of go off the path, and we're not going on the road we planned. Okay, but we're still trying to get to, you know, that example I had from Syracuse to Pensacola. You know, Pensacola is right here and Syracuse is right here, and you know, I'm trying to just find a good way to get there, and that's faithful to the way I wanted to go. So I'm just going to kind of mess around a little bit in here, try and find something that works, that gives me the look that I want. Okay, and this is where I find these little stretchy spine things useful, is in transition. But once I use them, I generally don't like to have them be used to create too many things as far as like poses. I like to stick with the FK controllers, but these little stretchy things are really useful for stuff like this. Okay, and what I want to do is I want to drag the head a little bit like this, so that there's a change of angles. Okay, so the head is at this angle here, and then I have it kind of like this, and then when it comes up, it kind of comes back. You know, as far as like this Z rotation, I like changing angles. Sometimes you can get a little too noisy with that, but I think it adds a nice I think it just makes things look a little more pleasant. Okay, so we got that, and you notice that I just did something right there. I'm changing one of my key poses. But you said a key pose, isn't you supposed to like protect it as holy and sacred? No. Always allow yourself room to make something better. Okay, and so yes, last month I made this and this as my key poses, but you know, that's what they worked okay in that context. I understood them. Now with this breakdown in here, I'm gonna try and push things a bit. You know, maybe I want to do something like this, because I know I want him to kind of sweep down and then settle. So maybe up here I just want to pull him up a bit. Okay, so I want that, and maybe when he comes down, another thing is we'll just do this. Okay, the one after. But we'll undo that one for now. Okay, because we're just working on this. So we're trying to get our breakdown working here. It's getting better. Okay, one of the things that will help is if I take this transparency right here, and I'm just going to set it to 0 so I can kind of see what's happening with the body and the door jamb and all that other stuff. Okay, and I want this to be fairly smooth as it comes through here. I don't want a lot of noise in how this shape changes on screen. What I mean by that is I don't want it to be like that. You know, I don't want the silhouette of this part right here in that area. I don't want it to be really noisy. I don't want it to be, you know, bulging and you know, sucking in different places so it feels watery. I like clean lines that are maintained in their decency, so that they just kind of, so that they flow. Okay, so I want it to give it more of a just, the words are escaping me. The best way to describe it is to draw it. If one frame is like this, and then the very next frame is like this, and then the frame after that is like this, and then the frame after that is what we really wanted to get, which is this. That's very noisy. You know, this area right here and this area right here wobbling, and things are kind of gross. If you are drawing an animator, if you were an animator who was drawing that, or you were an assistant doing the in-betweens, you would never do that. You'd get fired. Okay. The problem is the computer is clunky. Okay. It does that all the time because it's working mathematically, not like a pencil. So I spend a special attention to areas like this on the breakdowns to try and keep things feeling smooth. Okay. One of the things I'm going to do here is I'm going to kind of tuck the head back a little bit, and I'm going to cheat. I mean, the head's going through the door right there, but we can't see it too much, so I'm gonna cheat that guy right there. If we look at it from, you know, the perspective view, it kind of starts getting pretty broken, but again, it's just a matter of what you see and what you don't see. That's not particularly comfortable, but from this view it works. Okay. Another thing I'm learning right here is the shoulder could use a little bit of work. Is that something that's really important? I think it's good to keep the shapes in there rather smooth, again, so that we don't get a lot of wobble and warble. All right, and really try and accentuate this thing with the head. And here's what I'll do is I'll step through it like you know, it's like I'm rolling paper as a traditional animator. I'll just see how it flows together. And I'm kind of liking how it works. What I'll do is I'll turn off the keys, or sorry, the curves, so I can just kind of get a sense of how it feels. And specifically it's between these two that we really see it. And it's fine. I think it's working. I think one thing though, as I look at it, I'm not liking this area right here on this pose. It's feeling kind of noisy, as it were. So I'm going to try, and in Maya you can use the Alt arrow keys to kind of nudge things in ways that are just a little bit cleaner than grabbing them. Okay, and maybe I'll just do something like this to try and simplify that. Okay, because I don't want that area to be strobing a lot. Yeah, it's right there. You'll notice a lot of times what I'll do is I'll actually mark things right here on the screen. So like the edge of the hip is right there, and then when it comes over here, it's over a bit. But I really don't want it sliding through space. I want it rotating through that space, but not so much sliding. So what I'm going to do is, this is a great thing about Annotate Pro, is you can kind of move the little marks around. It's like dry erase, where you can move the dry erase. All right, and then come back here, and what I want to do is I just want to kind of nudge this thing over so that we're creating a solid place there on the silhouette, so that we reduce that noise thing going on. Okay, so if the hips get there and they just rotate forward, we don't have a lot of motion in there drawing attention to itself. So it's like getting that plate over before we stack all the donuts on it. So what I'm trying to do here is just kind of create that simplicity right there, so that as the hips come down, you notice it's rotating more than sliding, and that's exactly what I wanted to see. Okay, so I know that that's what I want out of the hips. So after I do that, I just have to think in terms of how to make the head and everything else work the way I want. So when you're dealing with FK controls, a lot of times there's only so much you can do to rotate things. And so you do what you can. Check that. Okay. I have a little hotkey that pops between perspective and the camera. It makes life a lot easier for me because I like to work in one big window, so I don't have a bunch of windows and panels all over the place. I like to work through the camera view. So you know, it's just one of the ways I've built my workflow to kind of accommodate the way I like to think. Okay, so what I'm trying to do here is just do some more work here so that I can accentuate the forward motion along with the upward thrust of this. Okay, and I could do it just with this squash and stretch thing right here, which is a really fun part of the rig, but you got to be careful not to use that too much in exclusion, because what happens is you lose control of some volumes. So the one thing I'm looking at here is I'm looking at a very smooth line right there, and it's going to be strongly contrasted right here, okay? Very strongly contrasted. So I want to make sure that I'm not doing anything that is making that kind of ugly. Again, I think in terms of drawing, really, and that helps me a lot in understanding, because it's really all about shapes moving on screen. It's not about body parts. It's not about elbows doing this, or it's really just about shapes flowing on screen. So I'm kind of liking that. All right, I think it's functional. Let me go back here behind the door. Okay, some things are kind of uncomfortable, but that's okay. I'm not worried about it. So now what we're going to do is we're just going to get the hand back here so that it's kind of faithful to what we're trying to accomplish for this door move. Okay. Now, one thing I could do, I notice I have some space right here. So what does this look like if I move this over a little bit? Does that makes things a little more comfortable on the shoulder? How does that look through here? Okay. It kind of works for me. The knee's starting to poke in the door though, so if I undo that, the knee kind of has a clearer. So this is one of those things where I didn't know if this is going to work, so I'm just going to talk through it. This, I kind of like it. Okay, to be perfectly honest with you, I kind of like how it feels. If anything, I want the head over here just a little bit more. Okay, and I wouldn't even mind having the head back a bit so that it wasn't completely outside the door yet. So maybe I wouldn't even mind having the head back here where we still see a bit of the door jamb covering in front of the head. Okay, that would actually be kind of cool to me. Now, of course, I'm breaking the rig in a pretty massive way because now his shoulder and stuff is just jammed up in there. So there's a couple of solutions here. I could take the shoulder controller and kind of pull it back, and it's a little bit better, but he's still chewing on his clavicle. Okay, so that tells me I can't do everything with the head. But the point being, sometimes you can look at something in the camera view and you like the way it looks. Okay, so I'm going to undo a couple of these things right there. Okay, in the camera view you like the way something looks, but in the world view you kind of sense, well, there's room here. You know, why doesn't he use this space right there? He could, but you have to make sure that when you do that, you know, the temptation is whatever view you're looking through is going to be the one that's going to rule the world to you. So you can try things out here. So maybe he would feel more comfortable this way. You know, maybe it would be better if he actually had something kind of going through the door that was a little more in line with, you know, what his reality is. And so we just kind of build something so that it doesn't feel quite so broken. But we want to make sure that that's not going to feel worse through the camera. And I'm just going to be honest with you, what I built before was much better. This is more physically accurate. Screw physically accurate. It's all about shapes changing on the screen. We are working on a two-dimensional surface here. Okay? Two-dimensional surface. You have a height and you have a width. When the people in the theater watch this, they do not have a depth, unless of course they're watching, you know, one of those new 3D movies. Okay? There is no such thing. It's just there. Okay? So everything we're seeing, even the illusion of depth, is all about shapes and shading changing on screen. So with this, I don't like this at all. I think it's more physically accurate. You know, if I come in here and stuff like that, it's far more physically accurate, but I hate it. I don't like the way it looks. And I can kind of dress that thing up, but I mean, take a look at the line. The silhouette lines are clunky. See that? It's kind of bulgy right there, and I don't like it at all. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go back and undo all this stuff sequentially. Okay? This I like more. I'm sorry, I just do. And because I've taken the time to build good lines, the head's flowing the way I want it to. Okay? The hips are doing what I want. So yes, is it accurate? Is it using the best? Is it the best use of the space that he's got here as a human being? No. but he's an animated character. So this is one of those instances where, okay, I'm not so sure. I know what I built I liked, but then when I looked at it in real world space, I realized, I'm kind of using this a little awkwardly. So I made the change. Again, this is the route. As things go, we kind of say, well, let's try this. And I tested it out, and I looked at it, and I said, I don't like it. And so I changed it back. And yeah, so he's going through the door real awkwardly. The great thing is this is not the view we're not going to film this view. This is the view we're going to film. So if anything, again, I'm just going to try and make those shapes even more dynamic. Okay. It's got good reversals all around. Okay, it's a definite stretch, squash, stretch kind of feel. Okay, it's got a downward swoop and then it comes forward and up. So as a primary breakdown, I think it's working pretty good. Okay, he's flat-footed here. He's heel down, and then up here is kind of like heel up. So what do I want to do right here? I think right here is probably a good place to do a little bit of flat-footed. Okay, and also while we're here, let's kind of get this knee over a little bit, so that it has a nice flow to it as far as how it's traveling. Because I want the shape to kind of go from bent to straighter. Okay, so it's really about changing that shape again. Okay, and that's what's important to me as an animator. So there's our primary breakdown in a way that, you know, is honorable of all the physics that we wanted to accomplish, and it gives the motion the kind of flair that you want. You know, it's like breakdowns are kind of like poses are the ice cream. Okay, you can put chocolate ice cream or vanilla ice cream or mint chocolate chip ice cream or butter pecan ice cream. You can put whatever ice cream you want in the bowl. There's your poses. Breakdowns are kind of like, what sauce do you put on it? Okay, do you want to put strawberry sauce, pineapple sauce, chocolate sauce? You know, you want to just take marshmallow sauce, whatever. It just gives a different flavor to the motion. I could have accomplished the same thing from here to here going over. I could have built a completely different feeling breakdown, and I still would have gotten from Syracuse to Pensacola, but I would have just gotten there by a different kind of route. This is the route I chose. This is the one I like. Is it the one that's right? It's the one I like. They pay me to make what works. Okay, and as long as it works, it's the right one. That's another thing I believe strongly. There's no one right way to do a scene. It's not like all other options are wrong, and except there's one perfect way to do a scene, and it exists out there somewhere, and if you can only just find it, then you are like an animation master. Nah, screw that, man. There's dozens of ways to do a scene the right way. If it works, it's the right way. Is it better or worse? No, it depends. You know, some could be better, some could be worse. Better or worse is personal preference. Working is something that we can all sort of understand. Okay, so here I am. I've got this. So I'm just going to take a couple of minutes here then to just get things settled out here with the eyes, because I like to do stuff so that the face is always kind of got its thing. I wonder if I can take this up and move it into Z so that it's actually closer to me. There we go. This way I can actually see it a little bit better. Hey, how about that? Okay, and we'll take I really like pushing things in a pretty solid way. Now one thing we can do here is we can squish the head just a little bit. And this is a way we can kind of get stuff feeling like it's behind the door or something. And maybe we can just go ahead and tilt that just a little bit more, just to make it stronger. Maybe we take this guy right here and I like feeling his mouth doing something right there, like like he's getting ready to, I don't know, say or do something. I like it. Just funny shapes is a lot of times what I'm after. Okay, so just kind of messing around a little bit. It doesn't rotate. Okay, never mind. And all right, so if we take all of this and we key it, so now we have, turn that off, select one of them first, then turn them all off, and I can step through it. The one thing I like about this particular view right here is he's not just angry. There's like a little bit of, you know, annoyed, worried in that. I mean, it's hard to see, but by taking this brow shape, instead of having it be like this and the other one be like this, which is angry, I have one like this, and you notice this one's more like this. So it's kind of like a mixture. And anytime you can make a character have a mixture of emotions, that just adds depth to them. It's very rare that we are absolutely angry. There's different shades of anger. There's irritated, there's annoyed, there's nervous, there's agitated, cranky, you know, whatever. There's all kinds of different things. So by this right here, by changing that flavor, even on the breakdown, we bring, you know, we bring some level of, you know, some emotional depth to the character that if you just had a straight angry brow, it probably wouldn't be as interesting to look at. And I can even accentuate that right here. Okay. There he is, a little bit angry, a little bit like something else. And it's, you know, oh gosh, I changed the pose again. Again, always leave yourself room to make something better. As an idea comes to you, you know, I get this reputation. Some people is like, oh, Keith Lango figures everything out up ahead of time, and to him it's just animates, and there's no spontaneity whatsoever. It's all structure, structure, structure. Baloney. I build structure, but I give myself room within that structure to play and find better things as I go. It's not like I am not the engineer who does things a certain way and never changes. Never. I'm not like that. You know, but I'm also not like a loosey-goosey, like, whatever the clouds feel like doing today, man. You can't do, you know, one or the other is going to give you crap, okay? This way, somewhere in the middle, you got like, all right, guys, these are the rules. Now go have fun. All right, so that's how I look at it. All right, so there's our primary breakdown. I think it's working pretty good, and I reserve the right to change this next week or next month. Sorry, but I think overall this is functioning pretty well. Yeah, I like how it feels. So what we'll do is we'll pick it up from here. Yeah, they're like, he took a whole month just to do a breakdown. Yeah, you know, it sometimes I'll spend a lot of time on this stuff when I'm figuring it out, but it's important for me to explain it because it takes the previous 3.5 years worth of videos and brings it down. So yeah, I spent one video on a breakdown, but you know, so many people out there don't know how to do breakdowns. So here you go. This is what I'm doing. Yeah, man. So that's what we got, and then what we'll do is, you know, next month we'll just keep going and we'll wrap this one up.
There you go. Okay, so to wrap this up, this month we did our, you know, primary breakdown. Next month we're going to pick up. We're going to start doing some of the other ones that address the eases, ease out, ease in, or cushions, however you want to call it. They'll fix some of the overlap issues. We're just going to start filling it out. Okay, we're going to make a few more drawings, and we're going to just really kind of flesh this thing out a little bit more and get it to the point where we could probably time it, okay? I doubt we'll get to the point where we're going to time it next month, but we're going to get it so that all the drawings that we need are there, okay? And if all the drawings are there, then we're in a position where we can start moving forward and seeing it more lined up with the audio, okay? But again, thinking like a traditional animator, I'm just going to make a few more drawings next month, and as I did this month, I'll explain my way through it, my thinking, what I'm trying to do, my goals, my mistakes, my adjustments. That's how it goes, man. It's animation. So, hope you enjoyed this one. Hope it was good for you. Thanks for coming along, and please do stick around for VTS44. for October, and we'll see how this goes, okay? Until then, be good, keep animating, God bless.